What are the federal sentencing guidelines and how are those impacting the federal criminal defendants in Oklahoma? My name's Ted Hassey. I'm an attorney at Worth Law Office. I handle federal criminal defense. Work out of our Tulsa office, and want to take a moment to talk to folks about the federal sentencing guidelines. The federal sentencing guidelines are published by the United States Sentencing Commission. They're a set of guidelines that are comprehensive for all kinds of criminal charges that can come up federally and take into consideration not just the base offense, but potentially enhancing factors, facts that are relevant to the defendant, the defendant's conduct, or the alleged victim, and what's kind of transpired in the alleged course of criminal conduct. These guidelines it was previously required by federal judges that they follow them. They're no longer required to follow them. However, they are required to take them into consideration. And in practice, federal judges generally do follow the guidelines or provide good reasons for why they wouldn't be following the guidelines. The fact that they're not required to follow the guidelines, that provides them more flexibility, and it makes it possible if a defendant is facing sentence before a federal judge, it makes it possible for us to seek a departure or a variance that brings it down below what the guidelines would normally bring, or what they would advise based on the alleged offense. Where it mainly comes to the place where a criminal defendant is particularly focused in on the sentencing guidelines, and where it's impacting their case perhaps the most is, first of all, there's the manual of all of these guidelines and a calculation for offense level, and then finally, and then secondly, there's a consideration of what the what the defendant's past criminal history looks like, and then this gets broken down finally into one chart that provides guideline ranges, these ranges of number of months for which somebody would be incarcerated based on the offense level. That's the calculation of the base based on the offenses for which the person is found guilty, the enhancements, everything that's added up into offense level, and so that goes down the row side, and then across the top you have different criminal history categories. And in the federal sentencing and under the guidelines, criminal history can have a huge impact on how much time somebody actually ends up serving if they're found guilty or plead guilty. So the way that this in practice ends up getting in front of a judge is, in all circumstances, after if an individual is found guilty by a jury, or changes their plea to guilty either pursuant to a plea agreement or through what we call a blind plea, which is pleading guilty without some deal ahead of time with the federal prosecutors, then the U.S. Probation and Parole Office is tasked with producing a pre-sentencing report to be provided for the judge that, in addition to a lot of other information that it provides, it does a calculation of what, under the sentencing guidelines, this would be the appropriate sentence. And so, no matter what happens on the front end, whether even in the case of a plea agreement, the judge is going to end up getting a report on what the sentencing guidelines would provide for if the judge were to do that sentencing. One of the unique ways that criminal defendants in Tulsa and Oklahoma are interacting with this system now is particularly with regard to criminal history. Now, with McGirt and with the fact that many criminal defendants who are finding themselves in the federal system had previously had criminal convictions that are no longer any good, those criminal convictions are going to be treated in a very different way with regards to their criminal history. It's important, if you are facing criminal charges in the federal system, that you connect with a an attorney as soon as possible, and certainly they can advise you on how the U.S. sentencing guidelines are going to impact you in your case. Again, my name is Ted Hassey. If you have questions for us, give us a call, 918-932-2800.